calamus root has been used in Ayurvedic medicine for over 2,000 years, and traditional healers still prescribe it for memory, digestion, and breathing problems across India and Southeast Asia. So, how did this sacred healing root get banned by the FDA as a food additive in the United States, after lab studies linked one of its compounds to tumours in rats? In this video, we break down how calamus gets sold as ancient medicine versus flagged as a potential carcinogen, who keeps selling it, despite the ban, and the quick label. Checks you can start using today to know what you are actually putting in your body when a product says calamus on the front. Or, in 1968, the FDA banned calamus as a food additive in the United States, after lab studies linked one of its compounds to tumours in rats. That was over 50 years ago. So, how is the same root still sitting on supplement shelves, selling online as a brain tonic, and showing up in tinctures that people swallow daily without anyone checking what variety is in the bottle? In this video, we break down how calamus gets banned as food in one country and sold as sacred medicine in another, who keeps profiting from that regulatory gap, and the quick label checks you can start using today to know whether your ancient brain herb contains the compound that got it pulled in the first place. Why would a root that's banned in food still show up in wellness stores? Calamus goes by a lot of names: Acorus calamus, sweet flag, vacha, buck, gorbat. Depending on where you are in the world, people call it something different, but the plant stays the same. It grows in wetlands, marshes, and along the edges of slow-moving streams, rarely taller than a few feet, with long sword-shaped leaves and a thick rootstock that carries a sharp, spicy smell when you crack it open. The plant is native to Central Asia, and from there it spread across Europe, North America, and Southern Asia. Traders likely carried it along ancient spice routes, and it naturalized wherever the climate had enough water and warmth. Today it grows wild across huge stretches of the Northern Hemisphere, in the same boggy ground where cattails and rushes take hold. And here is where the story splits. In India, calamus root is a recognized Ayurvedic ingredient sold openly in markets. In the United States, the FDA banned it as a food additive back in 1968. Same plant, same root. Two completely different legal realities depending on which country you stand in. So ask yourself, when a root gets classified as medicine in one market and a health risk in another, which set of rules do you follow when it shows up in a supplement bottle with no country of origin on the label? What is actually inside the calamus root that made regulators nervous? The compound that triggered the FDA ban is called beta-acerone. It is a phenylpropanoid found in the essential oil of certain calamus varieties, and the concentration varies dramatically depending on which type of calamus you are dealing with. There are three main varieties. The diploid form, native to North America, contains little to no beta-acerone. The triploid form, common across Europe, carries moderate levels, and the tetraploid form, widespread in tropical Asia, can contain beta-acerone above 90% of the total oil content. That distinction matters because the FDA ban came after studies on the tetraploid variety. Researchers fed high beta-acerone calamus oil to rats over extended periods, and the animals developed intestinal tumours. The FDA pulled calamus from the approved food additive list. But here is the part that gets tricky. The ban applies to calamus as a food additive in the United States. It does not cover supplements, herbal products, or traditional medicine preparations in the same way. That regulatory gap means calamus root powder, calamus tinctures, and calamus essential oil still show up on shelves and in online stores, often without any mention of which variety was used or how much beta-acerone the product contains. Some sellers list it under traditional use disclaimers, which lets them sidestep the food additive ban entirely while still putting it in a bottle you swallow. So when you see calamus root on a supplement label, are you getting the North American diploid with almost no beta-acerone, or the Asian tetraploid loaded with it? Most labels do not say, and that silence is where the risk lives. How did ancient healers use this root for thousands of years without worrying about tumours? Calamus holds a serious position in traditional medicine systems across multiple continents, and the track record goes back a long way. In Ayurveda, the calamus root called vacha is classified as a medhya rasayana, a brain tonic. Practitioners prescribe it for memory enhancement, speech disorders, anxiety, and digestive problems. Some formulations combine it with honey or ghee and give it to children for cognitive development. That use has continued for over 2,000 years, and Ayurvedic texts treat it as one of the most valued herbs in the entire system. In traditional Chinese medicine, calamus appears as shi chang pu and gets used for cognitive fog, confusion, and poor concentration. Native American tribes used the North American variety for toothaches and ceremonial purposes. Some chewed the root directly, producing a numbing, warming sensation followed by a bitter aftertaste. In European folk medicine, calamus was chewed to suppress hunger and became a common ingredient in digestive bitters and liqueurs. Here is the question worth sitting with. Thousands of years of human use across multiple civilizations, and the safety concern came from feeding concentrated oil to rats in a lab. Does that mean the traditional use was reckless? Or does it mean the lab test does not capture how humans actually consume the plant? Traditional users chew small pieces or drink diluted preparations. They do not consume isolated essential oil at high doses daily for months. The honest answer is that nobody has run the kind of long-term human trial that would settle the debate, and that gap in evidence is exactly where both sides plant their flag. Who makes money when a banned root keeps selling as a wellness product? Calamus root trades through channels that look very different depending on which market you watch. In India, dried calamus rhizome sells in bulk at spice markets and Ayurvedic supply shops. The price sits low because the plant grows wild in many regions and cultivation is not complicated. Farmers harvest the rhizome, dry it, and sell it by weight. A kilogram of dried calamus root can cost the equivalent of a few dollars at wholesale, and it moves through the same supply chains that carry turmeric, ashwagandha, and other traditional herbs. Nobody in those markets calls it a nootropic or a brain supplement. It is just vacha, and it has always been there. Move to the United States or Europe, and the economics change fast. A small bottle of calamus tincture or a bag of calamus root powder can sell for $15 to $30 in a health food store or online supplement shop. Some brands position it as a nootropic, a cognitive enhancer, and charge accordingly. Others sell calamus essential oil at premium prices for aromatherapy use, marketing it as a focus aid or meditation tool. That markup exists because the product crosses a line from commodity to story. In India, calamus is a cheap, familiar root. In Western wellness markets, it becomes a rare Ayurvedic brain herb with centuries of tradition behind it. The root did not change. The packaging and the pitch did. And here is where the incentive gets uncomfortable. When a product carries a higher margin in markets where it is technically restricted, sellers have a reason to avoid specifics. Listing the variety, the beta-acerone content, or the country of origin could raise questions that hurt sales. So many labels stay vague and the buyer absorbs the uncertainty. If you are paying $20 for a bottle of calamus tincture, ask what you are actually buying. The root or the story printed on the label? And who in the chain tested the beta-acerone level before it reached your shelf? What does science actually say about calamus and the brain? The traditional claims about calamus and cognitive function are not just folklore. Modern research has started poking at the same questions, and some of the results are interesting. Animal studies have shown calamus extracts can improve memory in rodents under cognitive stress. Researchers believe the mechanism involves modulation of acetylcholinesterase, the enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine. Lower activity means more acetylcholine stays active in the brain, the same pathway several Alzheimer's drugs target. Other studies found anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and anticonvulsant effects in lab conditions. But every one of those studies was conducted on animals or in test tubes, not in controlled human trials. And the beta-acerone problem does not disappear just because the cognitive data looks promising. Some of the same extracts that showed brain benefits also contained the compound that caused tumours in rats. That creates a situation where the potential benefit and the potential risk sit inside the same root, and separating them depends entirely on variety selection and processing. So when a supplement brand tells you calamus supports cognitive function, ask which variety they used, what the beta-acerone content tested at, and whether any human trial backs the claim. If the answer is silence or a link to a rat study, you are making a decision based on hope, not evidence. How does one root end up legal in one country and banned in another? The regulatory split on calamus tells you something about how different governments weigh risk. The FDA ban in 1968 was based on animal data showing tumour formation from beta-acerone. The agency applied the Delaney Clause, which at the time required a zero-tolerance approach to any food additive shown to cause cancer in animals. The ban stuck, and calamus has never been re-evaluated for food use in the United States. In Europe, the European Medicines Agency has taken a different approach. They set a maximum acceptable daily intake for beta-acerone at 115 micrograms per person per day for herbal medicinal products. That means calamus is not banned outright, but products have to stay within limits. Manufacturers selling calamus-containing products in Europe are expected to test and comply. That is at least a measurable standard, which is more than most online sellers offer. In India, calamus remains a fully accepted Ayurvedic ingredient with no restriction on traditional use. The Indian regulatory framework treats it as part of an established medical system, and the safety profile is judged by historical use rather than isolated animal studies. That three-way split creates a real problem for anyone buying calamus products online. A bottle shipped from India to a buyer in California exists in a legal grey zone. The seller may follow Indian rules, the buyer assumes American rules apply, and the product itself might contain beta-acerone levels that would fail European limits. Here is the practical move. Do not assume any single country's rules protect you when buying international herbal products. Ask for a certificate of analysis, look for beta-acerone testing, and treat vague labels as a warning, not an invitation. Do the Ayurvedic texts and the supplement labels describe the same thing? Pick up a traditional Ayurvedic reference and calamus shows up with specific preparation instructions. Classical texts describe processing the root with milk, ghee, or honey, often combined with other herbs in precise ratios. The preparation method matters because Ayurveda treats the processing as part of the medicine. Raw calamus root and a prepared vacha formulation are not the same product in that system. Now grab a supplement bottle from an online store and the language shifts. Pure calamus root powder. Wild harvested Acarus calamus. Traditional brain tonic. The label borrows the authority of Ayurveda without following the preparation rules that Ayurveda considers essential. That gap matters because the traditional processing might reduce or alter the compounds that modern science flags as risky. When you skip the classical preparation and sell raw root powder in a capsule, you are not delivering traditional medicine, you are delivering a raw material with a traditional label. Online retailers push calamus as a nootropic, a lucid dreaming aid, a meditation enhancer, and a digestive fix. That list covers enough conditions to make you pause. When one root claims to improve your brain, your gut, your sleep, and your spiritual practice, you are looking at marketing that borrows from tradition without following tradition's own rules. Treat both the ancient texts and the modern labels as clues. The Ayurvedic system has its own logic, and it includes preparation steps that modern sellers skip. The supplement industry has its own incentive, and it includes selling the story without the safeguards. Your job is to read past both and ask what is actually in the bottle. When it hits the wellness shelf, who actually benefits? People call calamus a sacred cognitive herb. So what evidence supports daily use? The animal studies are interesting but incomplete. The traditional use is long but not validated by modern clinical trials. And the safety question around beta-acerone remains open for the tetraploid variety that dominates Asian supply chains. A small bag of calamus root powder can sell for $10 to $20 online. The same quantity of raw rhizome at an Indian market might cost under $1. That price gap exists because the wellness label adds perceived value that the raw root does not carry on its own. The moment someone prints cognitive support or ancient brain herb on a pouch, the margin jumps, and the buyer pays for the promise more than the product. So who benefits when a banned food additive keeps selling as a supplement? Companies benefit when the traditional story drives sales without triggering regulatory scrutiny. Buyers benefit only if the product is properly sourced, tested, and prepared, and most retail calamus products make no promise on any of those fronts. One last detail: the North American diploid variety of calamus contains little to no beta-acerone, and it has the longest documented safety history among Native American users. If you want calamus with the lowest known risk profile, that variety is the one to look for. But most supplement labels do not specify variety, which means you are trusting the seller to make a choice they have no financial reason to make in your favor. If you want more breakdowns like this, where one root can be sacred medicine in one country and a banned substance in another, hit that subscribe button. I will keep bringing quick label checks so you know what you are buying before you put it in your body. We will see you in the next video.